today is the day of the National Prayer Breakfast. It happened earlier this morning.
This morning in the Capitol Visitor Center of all places.
Is that right?
Yeah, normally it takes place up at the Washington Hilton.
Interesting. I didn't realize it.
Max and I have attended together for several times, and Max, I think, goes almost every year.
I'm a junkie.
Yeah.
Prayer breakfast junkie. Love it.
But the last 2 years it's been virtual, and today was semi-virtual. I think only members of Congress and some special guests were in attendance. Tell us a little bit about what you saw today and what impressed you and how you got involved maybe with the prayer breakfast, because I'm sure that's so much of what's led you, I think, and continue to define your mission as come from that experience.
Yes. So 70 years ago, President Dwight Eisenhower had told a friend of his in the Senate that the White House was the loneliest place he'd ever lived. And so he was invited to join members of the House of Representatives who met weekly to pray together and members of the Senate who met weekly to pray together. And that first prayer breakfast 70 years ago was just members of Congress, a handful of other guests, and the President of the United States. Today, that was recreated because of the pandemic. So it was over more than 200 members of the House and members of the Senate, some of their spouses, bipartisan. You would be shocked at some of the folks who were there, because you would think that they would never be there, and they were. Right. The guest list isn't a public thing, but it was amazing. And so the original intent was to bless the president. And that's what happened again this morning. So President Biden was there, as he's been both last year as president, as vice president, as senator. Vice President Harris was there. I got a great story about that in a bit. Members of Congress. It was co-hosted, as it has been for many, many years, by a Democrat, Kirsten Gillibrand from New York, my home state, and a Republican, Senator Mike Rounds of South Dakota, whose wife unfortunately just passed away from cancer a few months ago.
Yeah.
And it featured Brian Stevenson, the subject of the movie Just Mercy, with Michael B. Jordan and Jamie Foxx, by the book of the same name that he wrote, the founder of the Equal Justice Initiative. He's from Delaware originally, before he moved down to Alabama to work against the death penalty. And so he was introduced by Chris Coons, the senator of Delaware, who's incredibly active with the prayer breakfast, was friends with Senator Jeff Flake there of Arizona before his retirement, and just a great testament to what is possible. So this morning was a great example of what can be. And so you're right, it was hybrid. There were just the members and their spouses there in the Capitol Visitor Center. It was live streamed around the world. It was carried live by C-SPAN. Folks can watch it by just Googling 2022 National Prayer Breakfast. And it's well worth the almost hour and a half that it was to listen, to be encouraged, to be hopeful in ways that you might not otherwise, just reading through what's happening in DC otherwise.
Well, it's a great example, as you point out, that there's so much division and partisanship and, just
vitriol.
Good word. And the prayer breakfast, to me, is one of the, I don't know if there's anything like it remaining as far as truly bipartisan and really focused on how can we work together. Because the issues of faith are super important in our nation and in the world. And in your case, Max, in particular, the issue of hunger, which is, I can't think of a more important issue for people to be engaged in.
A great example of how that practice has come to be, just one of many stories. Sean, I saw that you worked with Senator Tom Coburn who was elected to the Senate, having served in the House previously,
Mm-hmm.
the same year as Barack Obama was. They met in freshman orientation. Their wives met each other. They liked each other. And they voted against one another, I would guess, about 90% of the time.
That's probably right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that relationship founded on their shared faith. It might have had different expressions, but Tom Coburn, before he passed, never doubted that Barack Obama was a believer in Jesus. They disagreed, and they fought it out tooth and nail when they were in the Senate, when Obama was in the White House. But as you can see by going back to some of the prayer breakfasts past, when Obama was president, he gave such a warm and heartfelt shout out to his brother, Tom Coburn, because of what was possible. And that still is possible, despite how our differences have been exacerbated, the partisan tensions are aflame, but it really is amazing. So this morning, Majority Leader of the Senate, Chuck Schumer, Jewish guy from New York, read the Old Testament passage from Deuteronomy 6 and Leviticus 19 about loving God and loving others. And then Mitch McConnell from Kentucky, happens to be a Republican, gets up and reads the passage from Matthew where Jesus talks about those very same verses. First time that's ever happened. Amazing.
Fascinating. That's awesome.
Yeah, I saw that, and I was really touched by that. And Senator Schumer opened it up by speaking in Hebrew, and which I thought was fantastic. And Mitch, of course, did a great job. And they both, seeing them both up there together gives people hope. And when I first moved to D.C. and met you and started spending time on these issues, I had no idea the prayer breakfast existed. I knew nothing about it. And then I got asked to usher at the National Prayer Breakfast. And it was one of the times that changed my life. It really made me understand so much more about seeing other people in the image of God. And that's what really the prayer breakfast tries to achieve, is your heart, changing your hearts and minds is one thing, but once you are able to see another person, not as a liberal or as a Democrat or as a Republican or a conservative, whatever the labels are of the day, if you see them as a child of God, then it bestows upon you. Jesus calls us to find commonality and give each other grace and forgiveness and understanding. And that was neat to see this morning. I thought everybody did a tremendous job. And the partisanship that you might feel for somebody and the issues of the day, whether whatever it might be, the partisan flames, the passionate flames, as our founders, kind of termed it. It goes away in that moment. And the fact that the prayer breakfasts are, in the House and the Senate are still going on today, and need to be strengthened by new believers and new leaders, I think is really important.
Another illustration, my former boss, Tony Hall, who was a Democratic congressman from Ohio, became a believer only after coming to Congress. And that led him to study the Bible, to want to bring his faith into his workplace, but not in a way that was smashing a Bible over the head of others. And it was hunger that rose to the forefront as the way he could do that, especially after he was the first member of Congress to go to Ethiopia more than 35 years ago during their great famine, where 1 million people starved to death. He saw a couple dozen of those children die as he was visiting the Missionaries of Charity, Mother Teresa's group there. That sparked in him a desire to work on this as an issue, both in Dayton, Ohio, as well as around the world. But it was thanks to the prayer breakfast and the weekly larger group, and then a smaller group where he forged a friendship across the aisle. His best friend was a Republican congressman from Virginia, and Frank Wolf. And that set a model for me. So 2 of your former guests, both John Desser and John Hart, are two of my closest friends in the world. I don't agree with them on a ton politically, but we've shared our lives together. They were at my wedding. I was at theirs. We've walked through life together for more than 25 years, the ups, the downs, the goods, the bads. And it's because Jesus is able to be bigger than all of that and unite us in ways that, if we give that a chance, are incredible.